So the iPhone 16 Pro has been out for a couple months now, and in the keynote announcing this phone, there was a whole bunch of really neat features. Those include the new camera control button, the photographic styles, the voice isolation in videos, and a whole bunch of other stuff. I've now traveled to a couple different countries with this phone and shot a couple thousand photos and videos, and I've got a whole bunch of thoughts about the iPhone 16 Pro. So I think that the camera control or camera capture button, or I can't remember what this button is actually officially called, but whatever it is, this was the selling feature of the iPhone 16. So the way that this button was marketed is that all of your camera controls are used on this button. You can swipe and use gestures to get between them. So holding this camera for the past few months, I still don't know if I'm supposed to use that button in horizontal mode or vertical mode. I think I said this in my initial thoughts of the phone. Holding this in vertical mode, it's kind of difficult for me to reach this with my thumb, and holding this horizontally, it's just not in the right spot. So I just have not found myself using this button. I mean, I've tried to use this button, I've tried to force myself to shoot with it, and other than just the awkward position, I also find the interface difficult to use. I've been accustomed to Apple taking really great photos straight out of phone, so I'm not actually really looking to change them that much or have much more full control over my images. I'm focused more on framing and less about settings. And if I am focused on settings, the screen's right here and so is my thumb. So it's pretty easy to change the settings with my thumb. I don't need a dedicated button, or maybe I'm using it wrong. Where I have found that this button is actually pretty useful is launching the camera. When I reach for my phone in my pocket, and my thumb is positioned right over the button, so it's pretty easy to press it as I'm pulling the phone out of my pocket, and the camera is launched. I didn't think I'd be using this button that often. I mean, I was hopeful that I might be, but yeah, I just barely use this, I think, the way that they intended. Photographic styles is another one of these features that was released with this iPhone that look really cool. And when I first saw this feature, my mind went to, this is trying to compete with what Fuji has got going on with their recipes for their photos. I've got some thoughts about these photographic styles. First being that you need to shoot in HEIF, not JPEG, to get these photographic styles to work on your photos. Some people like shooting in JPEG, some people like shooting in HEIF. I personally like shooting in JPEG because it's not an HDR looking photo and it's compatible with your Mac, with your friend's Android device, with your mom's Windows computer. It's just a more flexible, adaptable file in my experience. HEIF is a great file format as well. It's actually a smaller file size, which I find is advantageous, but the files just aren't as compatible as they should be. So I've been shooting in JPEG. I've had to switch over to HEIF, at least to try out these photographic styles. So I took my iPhone 16 Pro and my Fuji X100VI to Portugal with me, and I put them head to head and shot side-by-side comparison photos to see what the images out of both of these cameras looked like and how stylized or not stylized these images were. And I made a full separate video about that on my channel. You can check that out. I've got a lot more thoughts about that in there. But in short, I think the photographic styles are actually pretty great for the average person. I don't think you need to buy a dedicated Fuji camera to get the fun of getting these baked in looks into your photos. It's not perfect, but I think it's a really good start and it's a lot of fun for the average person. I think it's not the most obvious when these photographic styles are turned on or how to adjust them, especially for the real casual photo user. I can imagine somebody's going to be shooting photos in black and white and not know what is going on with their phone because it's really easy to just accidentally tap that button in the top corner to turn these on or off and switch between them without knowing what you're doing. I don't know a solution for this. It just doesn't fully feel polished to me. When watching the keynote, I thought the voice isolation feature on the videos is a really, really cool feature. And for myself, I was hoping that it was gonna eliminate the need to use a microphone on my iPhone at all. Lately, I've been getting hired a good amount to shoot stuff on my iPhone. This stuff usually ends up on Instagram stories or on social media, so it needs to look like it's been shot on an iPhone. Sometimes this is lifestyle stuff, following somebody around, directing them what kind of activity they should be doing, and other times it's interviews, and this is where I thought that voice isolation feature would be really handy. It'd be really nice if the subject didn't need to hold the microphone or have it clipped to their shirt or have the lapel also attached to their shirt where it's in plain view. I tested this a couple times and quickly found out that the voice isolation from a couple feet away does not do an incredible job at least in my experience. I think the sweet spot and the best spot is if you're holding your phone out in front of you as if you're vlogging.
We were at this spot 2 years ago for sunrise in peak tourist season, and we were the only people here. And now this place has boardwalks and so much more infrastructure, and there's lots of people, which is great because more people get to see this spot.
I think the in-frame option does the best, but I think having a microphone or just holding your phone closer to your face is gonna get an even better result. I like that this option is available. I found it useful in some situations, but I was expecting magic, and I don't think it's magic. It's decent, and I don't think it's worth upgrading for. Microphones like this do a much better job. I love that I can plug the receiver for my microphones like this directly into my phone. I mean, you can also do that on lightning ports as well, but the ecosystem works really well for shooting on an iPhone. What I have had a couple issues with is that when I'm shooting in the native camera app, I can't monitor my audio, and there's been a few times when the audio is coming in a little bit too low. On my receiver, it says it's coming in nicely, but when I go to edit, too quiet. So I've been thankful that these DJI Mic 2s also record into them so that I can boost the volume afterwards and retain all of that information, and I haven't lost the interview or whatever I'm being paid to shoot for. It might be kind of cool if iPhone could integrate when you plug in a DJI Mic 2 or some sort of other audio device. The interface on your native camera app could change and add audio metering and some of these more professional features. I know they're probably never going to do that. I know there's other apps that can do that, but there's just something about shooting in the native camera app that is just so pleasing, and it's the look that everybody I shoot for wants. Okay, so the voice isolation has not been great for shooting social media content, but what has been great is the dynamic range on these iPhones. Dynamic range is the difference between the brightest parts of your image and the darkest part of your images. I found that I'm really happy with the photos and videos that I can capture with the phone midday. The sky looks really blue, the person or the subject looks pretty well exposed, and this is pretty good overall. Sometimes it looks a little too manufactured on the iPhone, but I mean, this isn't a new thing. It's looked like this for years. I was part of a Secret Santa the other day, and the person who got me got an entire bag of snacks, including these chips. Do I put these back in the tube or do I eat them like this? These taste like fishy Pringles. They get better. Another introduction to the iPhone 16 Pro is the 5X camera. So this 5X is equivalent to 120 millimeters on a full frame camera. And that is not a focal length I use that often. I was iffy about this when I bought the phone. I think I mentioned it in my first initial review. And after using it for a while, it's a weird focal length. So in some situations, the 5X is really nice. Like when you're out in the wilderness and you need as much reach as possible, I would imagine if you're shooting wildlife or if you're trying to make these mountains look as close as possible, this would come in super handy. But for somebody like me who does photo and video, the 85 millimeter is a far more familiar focal length to me. I really notice the difference when I'm looking for the right focal length to find my subject. So I'll switch between the 1X and the 2X. And then there's this really big jump from the 2X to the 5X lens, and I feel like I'm missing something in between those. The gap between 50 millimeters and 120 millimeters just feels too big. After using this for a few months, I found I've consistently needed to continue to back up if I want to use the 5X lens and properly frame the subject that I'm shooting. There's been more situations where this is too close of a focal range than me wishing that I had even longer of a focal range. This isn't a deal breaker, it's just kind of annoying. I still wish I had the 3X. If I had to choose between the two, I'd probably take the 3X 85, is it 85? 80 something millimeter.
The stabilization on the 5X camera is pretty wild. Once you switch to this lens and wait a second or two, the image is locked in. It feels like you're on a tripod. You can shake your hands and move a little bit, and it doesn't even show up in the finished image. It's much more stable than if I were to have a 120 millimeter lens on my camera. Very impressive.
While we're on the topic of lenses, I was really hoping that the ultra-wide 13 millimeter lens on the iPhone 16 Pro was gonna be groundbreaking and much stronger than the iPhone 15 Pro. Maybe it is when you pixel peep, but when you're shooting in lower light, it feels like the lights turn off when you're switching between the 1X and the 0.5 camera. It gets noticeably darker and a lot of noise is introduced into your scenes. Okay, a few other things to touch on. USB-C, Love it for the same reasons as I did last year. Eliminated like half of the cords in my life, which is incredible. Almost my entire life is pretty much run off USB-C now. I love that I can also attach pretty much anything into this now. Microphones, hard drives, it's great. No complaints there. Apple Intelligence has arrived in Canada. That's probably a whole entire video on its own, but the features that I use most for photo and video are the remove feature in the Photos app, and I found I haven't really used it that much. It's kind of nice when I'm taking snapshots and putting them on Facebook Marketplace to sell stuff, to clean up the dust marks and stuff, but like other than that, I'm doing most of my photo editing in Lightroom. Haven't really used that feature. If you can hear that humming, I'm sorry, I'm sitting next to ice machines and fridges and stuff. Sorry. Another thing, the 16 Pro is a little bit larger than the 15 Pro, and I've barely noticed. It's so minimal that as soon as you put a case on it and everything, you don't notice, so not much to say there. Better slow motion, 4K, 120 frames per second, also introduced on this phone, and I've never used it, unless I'm forcing myself to for a test or something, but yeah, never used it. And I think that might be a bigger conversation. I have just been noticing that I want more of a separation between my digital life, my notifications, my maps, my Spotify, and my photo taking life. And as incredible as the phone is at capturing this stuff, it's still a phone. It still gets emails and all of these notifications that distract me from taking photos and videos. And I haven't found a way how to separate my mind from taking photos when I want to take photos when I'm holding my phone, at least beautiful, incredible photos, not just snapshots, and just using a dedicated device like my Fuji camera or the smaller Sony cameras or stuff like that. Maybe all I need to do is just flip this thing into airplane mode and problem solved, but yeah, when I have this camera with me, I don't find that I'm shooting the best photos that I can because my head totally isn't in the iPhone camera. My head is telling me that I'm holding a cell phone and I should be doing cell phone things. So overall, I've been super happy with this phone. I'm happy I updated. If I had to change things though, I think I would have been fine with the iPhone 15. The iPhone 15 has everything that I was wanting. An incredible camera, USB-C, and log recording. I don't know what else I would need, but I got the 16 and I'm very happy with it. I'd love to hear if you have the iPhone 16 and what your experience with it has been like. Anyways, my name's Davey. Thanks for letting me spill the gravy, and I've got another video about what I have on my iPhone 16 if you're interested. Otherwise, we'll see you in the next video.